Imagine, if you will, a world where all the nuclear weapons are detonated at once. A catastrophic event, no doubt, but what would really happen? How would the world change? Hold on to your hats because we're about to dive deep into the numbers and physics behind this apocalyptic scenario. Picture this. Our world is home to approximately 13,890 nuclear weapons. That's a lot of firepower, isn't it? But what does that mean? How much energy would all these weapons release if they were to detonate at the same time? An astronomical figure of around 2,485,000 kilotons of TNT. To put it in perspective, that's equivalent to the energy released by the explosion of over 2 trillion kilograms of dynamite. Mind-boggling, isn't it? But let's break it down further. What would the effects of a single nuclear bomb look like? Well, the energy released by just one of these weapons can cause an explosion so powerful that it can obliterate an entire city. The heat from the explosion would be so intense that it could cause third-degree burns in an area up to 20 kilometers away. The blast wave could destroy buildings, bridges, and other structures within a radius of up to 10 kilometers. And the radiation, it could cause immediate sickness and death, not to mention the long-term effects like cancer and genetic damage. Now, imagine multiplying all these effects by 13,890. The total devastation would be beyond comprehension. Cities would be flattened, forests turned into wastelands, and large portions of the earth would be rendered uninhabitable due to radiation. The loss of life would be immense, and the survivors would be left in a world drastically changed by the nuclear fallout. So, we've established that the combined power of all the nuclear weapons in the world is massive, but what would that look like if they all went off at once? Let's explore. In the immediate aftermath of a nuclear explosion, there are 3 key factors to consider: the blast, the radiation, and the thermal effects. Let's dive a little deeper into each one. A nuclear blast accounts for about half of the energy released in a nuclear explosion. This is the shock wave that flattens everything in its path. Imagine, if you will, a rush of wind stronger than any hurricane, moving at the speed of sound. This isn't a gentle breeze. It's a wall of compressed air that crushes buildings and turns everyday objects into deadly projectiles. The shockwave alone is responsible for most of the immediate death and destruction caused by a nuclear explosion. Next, we have radiation, which contributes a mere 5% of the energy. Don't be fooled by this seemingly small percentage. This is no ordinary radiation. It's made up of gamma rays and neutrons that can penetrate deep into the body, damaging cells and causing both immediate and long-term health effects. An exposure to a high dose can result in acute radiation sickness or even death, while lower doses may lead to an increased risk of cancer later in life. Lastly, we have thermal effects, accounting for about 35% of the energy. The intense heat generated by a nuclear explosion can ignite fires over a wide area, leading to what's known as a firestorm. The temperatures at the center of the explosion can reach levels comparable to the surface of the sun. This can cause severe burns to people and animals, and ignite buildings and vegetation, contributing significantly to the overall destruction. These 3 factors together result in a deadly trifecta of destruction, radiation, and fire. And remember, this is all happening in the blink of an eye, faster than most of us can comprehend. The immediate effects of a nuclear explosion are devastating, but they're just the beginning. Let's take a look at the long-term effects next. The long-term effects of nuclear detonations are often more deadly than the immediate effects. They include nuclear fallout, nuclear winter, and radiation sickness. Let's start with nuclear fallout. Imagine a mushroom cloud blooming in the sky, an iconic image of a nuclear explosion. As this cloud dissipates, it leaves behind radioactive particles that descend to Earth. This is what we call nuclear fallout. Depending on the size of the explosion, fallout can cover hundreds or even thousands of square miles. The particles can remain lethal for weeks, months, or even years, contaminating the soil, water, and air. Now imagine if this happened on a global scale. The fallout would be catastrophic. The radioactive particles would make vast regions uninhabitable, causing long-term damage to ecosystems and human communities. The numbers are staggering. For instance, the Chernobyl disaster in 1986 resulted in a contamination area of about 100,000 square kilometers. Next, we have nuclear winter. This is a term used to describe the global cooling that could occur following a large-scale nuclear war. The theory is that the soot from the fires caused by nuclear explosions would rise into the stratosphere and block out sunlight. This would result in a drop in global temperatures, potentially causing a mini ice age. The effects on agriculture and ecosystems would be devastating, potentially leading to mass starvation and extinction events. Finally, there's radiation sickness. Those who survive the initial blast and the fallout may still suffer from the long-term health effects caused by radiation exposure. Symptoms range from nausea and vomiting to cancer and genetic damage. The survivors of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, known as hibakusha, have provided valuable data on the long-term effects of radiation exposure, with many developing cancers and other health problems years after the bombings. The long-term effects of nuclear detonations are truly terrifying. But what would happen if all the nuclear weapons in the world were detonated at once? If all the nuclear weapons in the world were detonated at once, the consequences would be catastrophic. Let's paint a picture of this grim scenario. Imagine the destructive power of just one nuclear weapon. Now multiply that by the roughly 15,000 nuclear weapons currently in existence worldwide. The immediate result? An explosion equivalent to billions of tons of TNT. Cities would vanish in an instant, leaving behind only the haunting shadows of their former inhabitants. But the devastation wouldn't stop there. The explosions would loft huge amounts of dust and soot into the atmosphere, blocking the sun's light and plunging the world into a nuclear winter. Temperatures could plummet by as much as 20 degrees Celsius on average, making it impossible for most life forms to survive. This sudden drop in temperature would have a ripple effect on our ecosystems. Crops would fail worldwide, leading to widespread famine. The oceans, too, would feel the chill, disrupting marine life and potentially leading to mass extinctions. The radioactive fallout from the explosions would be equally devastating. The gamma radiation released would cause immediate death or severe sickness for those in the vicinity of the explosions. But the long-term effects would be far more insidious. Radioactive isotopes like strontium-90 and cesium-137 would contaminate the air, water, and soil for hundreds of years, leading to an increase in cancer and other diseases for generations to come. And let's not forget about the impact on our infrastructure. Power grids would be wiped out, communication networks would collapse, and essential services like healthcare and transportation would grind to a halt. Society as we know it would be thrown back into the dark ages. The consequences of detonating all nuclear weapons at once would be catastrophic, to say the least. But there's one more thing we need to consider. What would happen to the Earth itself? The Earth, our home, would be the ultimate victim of a global nuclear detonation. But how exactly would it be affected? Dive into the abyss of this hypothetical scenario, and the first thing that strikes is the apocalyptic alteration of our atmosphere. Following the detonation, an enormous amount of dust and soot would be propelled into the stratosphere, cocooning the Earth in a nuclear winter. This grim veil could reduce global temperatures by several degrees for many years. The chilling result? A devastated agricultural landscape and widespread famine. The atmospheric disruption would also lead to a significant depletion of the ozone layer. The harmful ultraviolet radiation from the sun would then reach the Earth's surface unfiltered, posing a critical threat to all life forms, especially those in the ocean's upper layers. Next, we turn to the ecosystems. The colossal energy release would ignite wildfires on an unprecedented scale, obliterating vast expanses of forests and the species that call them home. The subsequent nuclear fallout would contaminate water and soil, making large parts of the planet uninhabitable for centuries. Lastly, let's consider the Earth's rotation. Though the impact on this would be negligible, the cumulative force of all detonations could minutely alter the Earth's axial tilt, affecting seasons and climate patterns. So there you have it, the catastrophic effects of detonating all nuclear weapons at once. It's a chilling thought, but one that underscores the importance of nuclear disarmament and peace.